Working right now. Get it in before the end of the day. We got to talk about parallelism. So take out your notebook so that we can take some notes. Everybody should have written in their notes that positives can do what 4 things?
My notes are in my homework.
Yeah. Clarify. You don't need. You'll get that back in a little bit.
My parallelism stuff was in there too.
Oh dear.
Oh yeah, so was mine.
Holy buckets.
I wrote all of my parallelism.
Silly gooses.
Why don't you just hold on to that for now? Jot down anything new that you need to jot down based on our discussion, and then leave it with me at the end of the day. Not the end of the day, the end of the hour. You'll get it back tomorrow.
In there too.
Yep. You'll get it back tomorrow. Add anything new into there that needs to be added into there. So again, positives do what, Ms. Bauer?
Clarify, describe, explain, define.
Define. And if I asked you to analyze the rhetorical effect of the writer's use of an appositive, that means you would do what? What would be the 3 steps you would undergo? First thing you're going to do is identify the appositive. Second thing you're going to do is
Identify what it is. Analyze the whatever. Pick which one it is.
So you're identify the appositive, pick which one it is, just like the sentence you wrote for today. So your first sentence, you identify the appositive and state what it does. Your second sentence is explain how it's doing that thing. And then your third thing you're going to do is the what? The rhetorical impact. And rhetorical impact means what?
How it affects the argument.
How it affects the argument. How the appositive affects the argument.
If it wasn't there, like why is it there?
Or what is its function? You know, the one we looked at yesterday with the comparison between the world to a spaceship. What was the purpose of that appositive on the article as a whole? The author brought it up in order to contrast it. You know, so the authors use things to contrast, they use things to connect, they use things to build upon other things. So again, if I ask you to analyze the rhetorical function of something, step 1 is identify that thing, step 2 is explain how that thing is happening, and step 3 is to examine how that thing plays a role in the writer's larger argument. Does that make sense for appositives? Okay. That needs to be a tight thing for you. Okay. Second thing, parallelism. Now, much like appositives, parallelism has 3 things it sets out to do. So appositives clarify, define, explain, or get more specific. Parallelism, writers use parallelism in order to do what? Where would you find the answer to this in your book?
We're talking about parallel.
Specifically, what's subheading? The rhetorical. Yeah. So it's
Stylistic.
yeah. I'm on page 3, 5, 6. 3, 5, 6. Logan, you got something?
Rhetorical and stylistic strategy.
Hey, what page study?
Anaphora
Oh, what page?
and a medical
386. Okay.
Rhetorical and stylistic strategy.
Hey.
386.
Read the first paragraph. And
Out loud?
no, in your head, read the first paragraph and tell me what 3 things writers use parallelism for. Logan.
On the level of the word phrase. Oh, I'm on. Okay.
Yep, you are.
That's sad.
You're coming around to it though.
Paragraph, and I was right off.
You just got
Oh,
really
to
excited.
emphasize ideas,
Yep.
contract ideas, or to connect ideas. So emphasize, contrast, or connect.
All right. Now raise your hand if you're taking the AP Lang test. Okay, you are going to want to be familiar with those words that come after that. Agora, zaguma, antithesis. You know,
Intimidable.
and yeah, those words are going to be important for you, okay, to understand the definition of and understand how they reflect parallelism. The rest of you, you don't need to know those words. And you will get by in life without knowing what zaguma means. Okay? Now, but you do need to know, everyone needs to know, parallelism is used to do these three things. So much like in a positive, clarify, define, explain, parallelism helps emphasize, contrast, or connect. Does that make sense? Now, Logan, earlier in that paragraph, you stumbled across the three different ways a writer uses parallelism.
Yeah, they use the level of word, phrase, word clause.
So I can have parallelism at the word level in order to do any one of this. I can have parallelism at the phrase level to do any one of this. I can have parallelism at the clause level to do any one of this. Now, when you were reading the section earlier this week, I think I assigned this on Monday. When you read it, it kind of goes in this order. It starts by showing you examples of parallelism at the word level, and then it shows you examples of parallelism at the phrase level, and then it shows you parallelism at the clause level. Now, the difference between a word and a phrase is what? Look, use the book to your benefit here. And what's the first sentence that's given in the section? Someone read that sentence out loud. The first example that they give.
Of the word?
Yeah.
Why should we live with such hurry and waste of life?
So why should we live with such hurry and waste of life?
Hurry and waste.
Hurry and waste. Those are two words that are example of parallelism. Why should we live with hurry? Why should we live with waste? Both of those words are talking about the word live. Does that make sense? So we live with hurry, live with waste. It's asking a question. Now, is that emphasizing something, contrasting something, or connecting something?
Contradict.
What's being contradicted?
You can either be
Very beginning of the section. Why should we live with such hurry and waste in our life?
Oh wait, no, that is not contradictory.
Correct. It is not
I would
contradiction.
not
If
look
hurry
into
and waste were contradictory words, then it would be contradiction. But it's not.
So it's emphasized.
It's emphasizing. And what is it emphasizing?
Why?
Yeah. It's emphasizing why should we live hurry. So it's emphasizing the idea of why should we live with hurry and waste. Those words are being emphasized with this example of parallelism. Does that make sense? Okay, so at the word level, you're just using, think of it like a list. You're using a list of words to define or describe a thing. At the phrase level, it goes a little bit beyond that. So a phrase is different from a word in that it's just a phrase is a combination of words. Someone read the first example from the phrase section.
Man esteemed truth remote in the outskirts of the system behind the farthest star before Adam and after the last man.
Can you read that again a little louder and a little slower?
Man esteemed truth remote in the outskirts of the system behind the farthest star before Adam and after the last man.
In the outskirts of the system, behind the farthest star. This is an example of parallelism in that all of those phrases are structured the same. Okay? Right. And again, don't get lost or don't get bogged down in words like preposition or, again, antithesis, agora, whatever. You want to be able, hold on a second. What page are we on? 384. Just notice how these are all structured similarly in terms of their sentence construction. Okay? In the outskirts, before the farthest star. So you have in, before, the word the, outskirt, farthest, farthest star, before Adam. In the, so it's in, it's like a place, the thing, and then something else. So that's an example of a parallel phrase. Now, I'm going to read it to you one more time out loud. Ask yourself, is this parallelism emphasizing something, contrasting something, or connecting something? Men esteem truth remote in the outskirts of the system behind the farthest star before Adam and after the last man. Is there something contrasted? No, so we can get rid of that one right away. I guess I'll tell you, the answers emphasize. Okay, much like our parallel words, hurry and waste, we're modifying live. All of these phrases are modifying what word?
One right after the preposition.
Huh? All of these phrases are defining or emphasizing what word that it comes in the first little part. Men esteem truth remote. Remote. All of these phrases are emphasizing something remote. Remote in the sense of it's behind the farthest star, in the outskirts, before Adam and the last man. Does that make sense? All three of those things are remote things. So we have a phrase being used to emphasize how remote something is. Are you with me so far? Okay. Now let's zoom forward. Let's try another one of these. Actually, that next one's pretty tough. So we're just going to scoot forward to clauses. The difference between a clause and a phrase is, so a phrase is a longer connection of words. What is a clause? A bigger,
Phrases.
yeah. So phrases is more words. Words are one thing or two things. Phrases are like you have a preposition and then a noun or something like that. Clauses, something bigger than that. Don't get bogged down trying to identify the difference between a phrase and a clause. Who cares? Okay, you just want to be able to identify when parallelism is occurring. So, clause, where I lived and what I lived for. So where I lived, that can kind of stand alone as a sentence. What I lived for, that can stand alone as a sentence. This is what makes it a clause. In this case, it would be an independent clause. Now, these things are parallel in that they're organized the same way. Where is parallel to what? I is parallel to I. Lived is parallel to lived. Does that make sense? The sentence is structured the same way. If you go down, we perceive that only great and worthy things have any permanent and absolute existence, that any petty fears and petty pleasures are but the shadow of the reality. On this, notice the comma that happens after absolute existence. What words are parallel between those two sentences? Words and phrases. Okay, so look at the sentence. Notice the comma that happens after existence. I'm telling you that everything that happens before the comma is parallel to everything that happens after the comma. Okay, so how do you see what's happening before the comma be parallel to what's happening after? Notice right away, we perceive that only great and worthy things. After the comma, what do you see? We perceive, maybe let's back up to the top. Again, clauses, where I lived and what I lived for. The word where and the word what are parallel to each other.
Yeah.
Those are two words from the same tree, right? The word I and the word I are parallel to each other. The word lived and the word lived are parallel to each other, right? So down here, what's parallel to what?
Petty and petty. What?
Well, that's an example of parallel words in that second clause. 100% Bauer.
Okay.
So those are parallel words in the second clause.
Oh.
I'm asking you what before the comma is parallel to after the comma. We've gone over time.
Great and
Okay.
great and worthy.
Great and worthy is parallel to what?
Fears and pleasures.
Yes, petty fears and petty yeah. That's structured the same way before the comma. It's structured the same way after the comma. Yeah, give those back to me. Make sure people who haven't turned stuff in get stuff to me before the end of the day. Come back tomorrow to talk about more parallelism.